All right, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to day 2, part 2 of this webinar series, all about setting up a company in China. Yesterday, we were looking at the 9 key considerations that you need to consider when establishing your companies. If you missed that session, the recording is already up on our YouTube channel. To get a link to our YouTube channel, go to our website, woodburnglobal.com. And then you can re-watch it or watch it new. We are recording today's session, so note that. Today, I've got 2 fantastic speakers, both Diana and Valentino, who are going to be talking about navigating the foreign investment law, something I'm very excited to be talking about today because although the law came out in January 2020, it really was not highlighted throughout the year because of COVID. So I am very excited to have them on here and to listen to them talking. Before we start today's session, I do this every single webinar. It is a way for myself to understand who's attending. It is a way for both Diana and Valentino to also understand who is attending. So if you would be so kind, in the chat section on the Zoom panel, open it up and interact with us, okay? The best parts of the webinar series are when people interact with us. So if you are a newbie to China, I define that as a company or an individual who has found an opportunity in China. They're trying to gain a certain level of education, and currently under this webinar series, they are trying to understand whether or not they need to set up a company in China. Startups in China are those of you that have probably already transacted with China for a certain period of time, maybe 1, 3, 5 years, and you're evaluating certain trigger points to see whether it would make sense to incorporate a company in China. And for those of you that are experienced China hands, those of you that probably already have entities in China, and you're just trying to get an understanding around the foreign investment law. If you are a newbie, if you are a startup, if you are an experienced China hand, just type that into the chat section. Nobody has typed yet. I'm going to wait for one person to type something. Thank you. So Julia is an experienced. Julia joined us yesterday. Thank you for joining us again today, Julia. Anybody else who can give a bit of background? Again, this always helps Diana and Valentino to have a bit of background. Clive's experienced. John is a startup. YG is experienced. Valentino, Diana, you can open up your chat box and just see what people are typing in as well. For those of you that haven't typed anything in yet, please do so. Again, the more you interact with us, the more we'll interact with you during the Q&A. Victor is a startup to experienced. Thank you, Victor. All right, so just to move on, how this webinar works. So from a technical standpoint, we are using Zoom meetings. I have muted everybody. Diana and Valentino are co-hosts with me, so they're able to maneuver the control panels just like I am. Look, with any virtual meeting, if you guys are running into technical issues, all I can recommend you to do is to log off and then log back in. If you're doing this 2 to 3 times, don't frustrate yourself. Just wait for the recording. It will be posted up onto the YouTube channel, and I will be providing you a link to that either by the end of today or tomorrow morning. If I run into issues, just note that it does take about 30 seconds or 1 minute, up to 1 minute for me to reboot my Wi-Fi system and then to log back onto the Zoom meeting. I will be coming back on. As Diana and Valentino are co-hosts, the Zoom won't actually shut down. It just means I will be logged off. If the same happens on their side, we will wait for them to, again, log back on. Our promise is we're gonna fight the system as much as possible and stay on to finish today's presentation, and particularly to hit the Q&A, which is usually always the fun part of the webinars. So if you guys have any questions, comments, please don't be shy. Write it in the chat section. I'll be controlling that as I'm the moderator for today's session. And we will then go through all of your questions and comments by the Q&A time. All right. So Again, this is your time spent. This is your 90 minutes. Use it wisely. There is no dumb question when it comes to China, so just ask. Another note, Valentino, Diana, and I, we've already inserted our contact details in the chat section. So scroll on up and you will find all of our details and ways of reaching out to us. So don't hesitate to reach out if you do have any questions or you'd rather to have a one-to-one conversation. A little bit about myself. My name is Christina Kohler-Colucci. I'm the head of business advisory at Woodburn Accountants and Advisors. I have been a leading expert on inbound investment into China for the last 17 years, having relocated to Shanghai at the end of 2003. I have been only managing corporate services and corporate compliance in China for the last 17 years. My expertise is China. And my focus is purely on foreign investors. And I've worked with over 500 companies with their pre-investment advisory, general advisory, business model advisory, and finally implementation into the Chinese market. And currently, really the fun part of the job for me right now is helping companies to grow in the Chinese market and analyzing their models to see if they have to pivot in any shape or form to be able to attack the Chinese market and grow exponentially. I'm a creator of the China Roadmap methodology as well as the China Profit Accelerator. And I do workshops on these every month on a rotating basis. If you're interested in our events, which are all complimentary, free of charge, you can go to our website, woodburnglobal.com/events, and sign up. It's as easy as that. So I am now going to turn over to Diana and Valentino. I'm going to stop my share. And Diana, you can share your screen. Super.
You work, right?
Oh, yep.
Okay.
Fantastic. Good morning, everyone. For those that is morning for you, maybe in Europe. For us, it's already late afternoon. We're in Guangzhou, southern China. My name is Diana Lowry. I'm sitting here with my colleague Valentino. We are both lawyers from Wanjing and GH law firm. I'm relatively new to the firm, not so new to China, but my colleague Valentino has over a decade of working with all sorts of companies, and he's an outstanding lawyer, both practitioner and in academia. So I'm sure you're going to enjoy his presentation as well. We are going to be talking about foreign investment law. As Christina said, there is a new set of rules that hit China just before the COVID, and nobody paid too much attention. But indeed, these are kind of major changes that happened for all of us. So I hope we will be able to give you a decent overview of the legal landscape and point out some of the key features that you have to pay attention, being a newbie or an experienced, or even those that have been here for decades who have to take certain actions to adapt to the new regime. So we're going to look at the overall legal framework. We're going to point at some of the not restrictions, but kind of systems that apply to foreigners in China, and the promotion of foreign investments as well, because China is taking steps indeed to promote foreign investments, especially in particular areas. So it would be interesting for you probably to know which areas are of interest to the Chinese government and Chinese state, and where your investment will be kind of rewarded in addition to the business reward that you're going to get. And of course, Valentino will touch more on this, the ever kind of standing question and issue about protecting your intellectual property rights and voluntary or involuntary technology transfer, which please, everybody who hasn't done enough work in China, be aware that this is your first step. I'm sure Christina probably already mentioned this yesterday, and I'm sure you'll be hearing this more and more during this week. So if you allow me just a few words about our company. As I said, we both work for one Jing law firm, which is based here in southern China in Guangzhou. So we are in the Great Bay Area, which indeed is great and has a lot to offer to foreign investors. We are 100 lawyers, of which some are foreigners, like the two of us. And the special thing about our company is that we have a dedicated foreign-related service team. And due to our focus on foreign investors and foreign invested enterprises, we have assembled a team that works in all these languages that you can see on the screen, and over a decade of successfully supporting foreign investors. Just a word about myself. As you probably noticed, I'm not a native English speaker. I'm originally from Bulgaria. I started my career, I don't want to say over 20 years, but that's when I started my career in Bulgaria in the financial and banking sector. Then I worked in London for a decade, and the past 5 years I've been in China, predominantly working with foreign enterprises, trying to understand where the business opportunities are for them and navigating through the legal and environmental landscape. So back to our question, what is the new foreign investment regime and what do you know about it? Is it so new that it's worth talking about, and is it better than the previous one? I think the answers to both questions is yes, because I've listed here, and you don't have to read or memorize all these, but actually the whole set of laws that have been governing foreign investors in the past, well, probably over 20, 30 years has been changed. You see that the classic three laws, the wholly foreign owned enterprise, and the other two joint venture laws have been abolished. The new foreign investment law replaces all of these, and it comes with a set of regulations starting with some implementation mechanisms, with the Supreme Court interpretation on some of the issues, and a set of other laws which do touch on foreign investors and have to be taken into account. Again, I've listed them here, but we are not going to go through all of them because it's going to be too lengthy and probably not necessary for some of you. But if you do have special interest and you think you might need to consult with regard to any of those, please reach out and we'll be more than happy to explain. So the new foreign investment regime is new regime and is a logical kind of step and outcome of a long process that the Chinese government, with us, the foreigners in China, has been through to understand where the pains for foreign investors are, what foreign investors want from China, and what China is willing to give them in order for us to live in this dream win-win cooperation world. So the foreign investment law has been in discussion for over 5 years and is now in force for just over a year. So is it better, and what is different about this new investment regime? There are several different things. As I mentioned, the whole kind of old regime has been replaced with this one, and the principle of the new regime are completely new. The key material difference is that foreign investors and foreign enterprises are not treated anymore in a special and different way. So the equality treatment principle is in the heart of this new regime. And what it basically means that you as a foreign enterprise will deserve not less favorable conditions than any of your Chinese competitors, partners, or any other Chinese company. This comes also with the important difference that there is no special regime that tells you foreign enterprises will be structured in this and that way, which is particularly designed for you. All enterprises in China will now have to comply and be established under the company and the partnership law. So those of you who have been here for a while probably know that with the coming into force of the Foreign Investment Law, which was on 1st of January 2020, you've been given 5 years to adapt to this new regime and to bring your company in alliance with these two Chinese laws. So equality treatment, what is in the heart of it? Often, many of the companies that operate in China have been complaining that some economic opportunities and business opportunities are not available for them to them. So government funding, for example, has been one of the key issues for foreign companies. There are many funds that the Chinese government is now providing to companies and industries in particular sectors. And we all hear in the newspapers, well, China is putting these millions here, that millions there. This actually does happen. Unfortunately, it's been out of reach for many of the foreign enterprises so far. Now, with the new foreign investment regime, this shouldn't be the case. And it's stated in the law, confirmed by the court, and there are legal mechanisms that you can apply, which I'll touch upon later, to when this right hasn't been offered or guaranteed to you. The next thing is land supply. Again, something which is of particular importance to everybody who wants to build a business here, because you know that everything starts with the piece of land that you want to use for your operations, to build your factory, and so on. And we all know how difficult it is sometimes to compete with Chinese companies who have their eye on the same plot of land. There are many ways that you as a foreigner can be put in disadvantaged position, and some of you have probably come across them. Others, luckily, probably not, and I hope you don't. But now this is, if you do think you've been put in unfavorable position or other compete unfavorably against you when it comes to land use and rights, you can get back to the law and get protection. Tax reduction and exemptions, similar stories, qualifications and permits. It's not that you wouldn't have been granted your qualification and permit, but sometimes it might take you 3 times the time of what it's going to take your Chinese a Chinese company. And this is an attempt now to make sure that there is a fair play and everybody will be treated equally in this respect. Standard formulations. It's not unheard of when you will wake up and suddenly there is a new industry standard and you just designed and put on the market your product, which apparently does not comply anymore with the new standard. So being able to actually influence and be part of the standard formulation gives you this so needed heads up with regard to what is coming up and what might impact you. As we all know, knowledge is money, and knowledge is everything in business. Government procurement, a huge topic. We know that China has still not signed completely to the WTO procurement regime, where they have to provide equal treatment to foreign enterprises. Well, this is a step towards this direction. It is stated explicitly in the new foreign investment law that government procurement should not be restricted or anybody put in disadvantaged position based on a region. There won't be any more preferential treatment to SOEs or to native products or any of those. So this is huge. I mean, some of you will probably understand me straight away when I'm saying is huge, because there is so much happening in China at the moment, and there's so much missed opportunities. And every time any of the chambers of commerce run any survey annually or for special report, this is the one thing that hurts businesses, big and small, the most. And some of the big businesses are actually recognized for their unique skills or unique products. So they might be kind of dragged by their Chinese partners into this government procurement process. But for the small and medium-sized enterprises, it's really been difficult to take part in this government procurement process. And I don't know which industries you represent, but there are huge areas which are untouched by foreign products at the moment. Starting with environment and environmental protection, we know that Europe is a pioneer, and we have so many technologies and so much know-how that we can share. And believe me, China is spending huge now, trying to rebuild their environment and trying to bring their their environmental consideration to decent standards. So if any of you is in this area, I would strongly recommend look at government procurement, because there will be a lot and it's going to be accessible to you. Project approvals and declarations, similar story. You can imagine what I'm going to say, but again, it's important equalization of foreign and local companies. So overall, the foreign investment law, it is a fair attempt to create a better business environment for foreigners. And it's much more clear and is much more strict in some respect, but at least you know what you should expect. And they at least, well, I have to be said that say that the foreign investment law on itself, I don't want to call it this way, but it's kind of a list of wishful thinking, which remains to be seen how it's going to be implemented. And we can see some implementation steps already happening, but the fundamentals and the principles are positive and show a good intention indeed. So transparency of administrative procedures is something that everybody complains about. Probably complain is not the right word to use, but everybody is struggling at certain points, including people like us that have been here for quite a while. But everybody knows that the labyrinth of administrative procedures in China can be huge, and you can easily be lost. And there is now a series of actions that do try to simplify this. And a lot of the sub-regulations that already came out in terms of reporting, in terms of booking your name and so on, do show intention in the same direction. So that's one of the areas that environment should be improved. Consultation within the policy making process, similar to the standards, but even kind of broader than it. It's been the case that China has been consulting with the foreign enterprises in China and with the foreign chambers for some years now. It's not fair to say that this is completely new, but it's now in legal statute and is now going to be implemented in more kind of more regularly and more structurally. There are little things like, well, they're not little, they're huge actually, fair and reasonable compensation in case of unilateral changes. When you interact with Chinese government, especially at local level and municipal level, there is often a chance that certain promises might not be kept, or certain changes will have to be made even for objective reasons. And now it's clear that in case that you have been in such a situation, you will be entitled to a reasonable compensation. A lot of the standards that are industry specific and have been issued by industry bodies will not be able to breach the principle of equal treatment anymore. The foreign investment law tries to kind of draw a line under who can make specific rules for foreign enterprises for sometimes legitimate reasons. And I'll touch upon this a bit later, so I'm not going to discuss this too much. And finally, but not kind of last but not least, you are now legally entitled to repatriate all your profits, your money for which you've earned lawfully and for which you paid taxes in China. And again, this isn't a novelty. It's been happening for years, but it wasn't stipulated by law. So you're always on the mercy of somebody who might delay transactions or might create difficulties or extract some other favors for their goodwill. So now, whoever tells you that there is a limit on the transactions that you can make from China, the currency or the frequency you can make these transactions, you should know that this isn't the case anymore. So I briefly touched upon these investment contracts that should be respected. Some of you who are more experienced do know that any big investment or even not so big investment starts with investment contract with local authority. And this investment contract will give you from agreement on what land is going to be used for your enterprise, what is the condition of this land, whether infrastructure is or will be provided and in what timeline, and whether what taxes and benefits you will be paying for a certain period if there is some concession that the local government is making for you. So this is an extremely important first step of many foreign invested enterprises. And the problem with this contract so far has been that it wasn't clear exactly what legal value this contract has. And quite often, local authorities will change or demand changes or even disrespect the contract based on arguments that their new policy commitments or their new policy kind of focus that they have to follow. There is new trends or new plans at the central government level, or even sometimes the fact that the local official that you signed with moved on and there is another official that is not so happy to respect the contract. So in this case now, you are given the legal right to protect yourself, and the officials are obliged to respect these contracts. So it gives you legal certainty that you didn't have before. And this is very important because otherwise it can take months or even years. And you probably know some of the kind of anecdotal cases, things like Disney Shanghai. They opened a few years ago, but actually the discussion about the land they're going to be using and the details of how they're going to be using and building this site have started in the 90s. So this, especially for certain investments, is of paramount importance. So what is foreign investment? Well, as you can imagine, foreign investment is all the investment activities made in mainland China, both direct and indirect, which have involvement from a foreign enterprise or a natural person. The definition is a little bit broader and a little bit more specific. So it helps, well, we probably won't go to these details, but it does have a legal value by stipulating explicitly what foreign investment is. And one of the kind of specific outcomes of this new definition is that it is explicitly clear now that you can invest by yourself, and you don't have to have a Chinese partner. And it's a common misperception to think that, well, you can only do business in China if you have a Chinese partner. This isn't the case, and it's clear now for everyone. The other thing is your Chinese partner does not need to be an enterprise. It can be a natural person, it can be your friend, and you can do business together. And indirect investment is also explicitly included as a form of foreign investment, which for more complicated foreign enterprises and foreign investments is of very big importance. We're not going to go into details. If you have questions about this, we can address them later, because this is relatively more complicated legal structure. It has its benefits, but it also has its its risks. And if you do decide to go for something like this, you have to take proper advice and consider all the sides. So, foreign invested enterprise. Again, we have a new definition. The main thing about foreign invested enterprise is that it's not anymore under the three old laws. It's any enterprise incorporated in China under Chinese law in the territory of mainland China, including foreign investment. Important thing is that there is no ratio requirement for the investment coming from a foreign investor into an enterprise for the enterprise to be considered foreign invested enterprise. There's no formal requirement about capital that you have to put into the enterprise. So a lot of these formalities, which gradually actually disappeared in the past years, are now fixed in the law, and there's no more room for speculation of what should or shouldn't be, we hope. So, and one last thing, which it's a new feature in the Chinese legal framework, which comes to show that the government is serious in their effort to protect foreign investors and their interests, and that China is open and willing to take investors, is the creation of new mechanism for protection of the foreign investments. So this is it's not it's an additional layer to the traditional protection that you already have, in a sense that it doesn't take away your right for arbitration or litigation or negotiation or administrative measures. But this one is a kind of a soft kind of mechanism to help you protect feedback and deal with the let's call it the soft tissue of the law. So you can trigger this mechanism when you have any concerns about policy measures, administrative acts, administrative organ, or even employee of an administrative body which you believe had acted unlawfully against you. And this is important for kind of for legal reasons, but also for kind of rather how to say not disciplinary reasons, but it has a good effect on the system, knowing that any government representative can be held accountable for their actions, and this can be triggered very quick. So you come across a representative of administrative organ who is clearly acting unlawfully. You have this very quick mechanism where you can take him to this body and ask for some kind of redeeming of these actions. So I think this is going to have a good disciplinary effect on the administration, and let's hope so. We were talking about how equal foreign investors and how equal foreign enterprises are to Chinese investors and enterprises. However, we all know that this is never the case, and it's not the case for China. It is across the world that there is always some limitations for foreign investors and foreign enterprises as to the business and the investments they can do. In China, this happens with the negative list system as one of the measures they have in place. So the negative list system is it's basically a list where you have several industries and areas and sub-areas where the state has decided that foreign investments are either prohibited or will be restricted. So it's not a new system, but because the Chinese state has experimented with it for quite a while, mainly in the free trade zones, but now since 2018 is rolled nationwide. So this list is published every year around June, July. The last one is from June 2020. You can find it and read it because there are quite a number of items that are listed there. And if you have any suspicion that you might fall into any of these categories, you have to check it out. In fact, there are two lists. One is the national list and one is for the free trade zones. And the free trade zones are always the experimental ground for the Chinese government to try new policies. The legal regime is softer. They would allow a little bit more. So as you find later in the week, finding your location in China has several implications. And this one, whether you are or you're not in the negative list, is one of them. So prohibited investments, you can see them there. Probably you probably would expect to see what is in the list: rare earths, some specific minerals, news agencies, broadcasting stations and radio stations, film companies, and so on. I'm not going to state them all because you can all find them if you have any kind of suspicion that you might be in such a business. Probably most of you already know whether they are or they're not. It's been quite popular topic anyway. Restricted investments, these are areas where you can invest, but you have to comply with certain restrictions. And in this case, a prior approval of your investment will be required. So again, check out the list, and there are some examples here on the screen which can help you understand where the restrictions might be. There are several services which are still in this list, so please check it out, including financial, legal services, medical, and education, and so on. So you might be required to kind of have a limit on the ownership of the share of the enterprise that you own. You might be required to have actual control by Chinese party, which is not necessarily the ratio of the shareholdings. You might be required to have a legal representative as a Chinese citizen to be legal representative of your company, or your management structure to be in a certain way, or a combination of the above. So please check out if you think you might have to consider this. And another new sort of a red line drawn for foreign investors is the security review system. This one is relatively more straightforward and probably not so applicable for you, but I will quickly mention it because there are a few key interesting points which you should be aware of. So again, this system, the security review system, exists in all jurisdictions in the US, EU member states. In China, has been implemented under different names in the past. Now, this new law, is the security review law, is in force since 1st of January. So it's brand new. If your business happened to be affected by it, I would suggest you take a look and evaluate your situation. So the interesting thing about this kind of regulation is that applies to all China, irrelevant of whether you're in a free trade zone or which part of China you operate in. It will apply for greenfield investments, but it could apply for some already existing investments. It will apply for direct or indirect investments, again, something important to have in mind. And the sectors that are kind of subject to security review are close to everybody's minds. This is military or national defense related businesses, but also investments in surrounding areas of military installations. So we're talking about physical presence around military installation. So have this in mind, on the back of your mind, because you never know where military installations are in China until you're told so. The other interesting angle here is that It applies, as you can see, in key agricultural, energy and resources, key major equipment and manufacturing areas, infrastructure areas, and all these key areas. We don't know which these key areas might be. So if you think that your product or your service is interesting for whatever reason, just have a check. It's not going to take you so long, but it's going to save you big troubles at some point, particularly because this law might apply to kind of dual use products. And we know now with the advance of technology that a lot of products have dual use, and research and development of these dual use products is also something that will be subjected to this. So in this case, you are not allowed to make an investment until you get an approval or green line from the authorities. There is a special mechanism. I'm not going to go into this because this might not affect the majority of you, but have it in mind. And finally, from me, there is a huge list of investment promotion catalog. So this is the opposite of the negative list, where the Chinese state has decided that particular sectors or industries would be promoted, and they would like to see foreign investors investing in these particular industries. Again, this is a huge catalog. At the moment, it has 1,235 items. It's updated every year. This year is larger than the previous year. So please check it out. It's not going to take you so long. It targets industries and products in various areas, from service-oriented products to kind of some key special materials, new materials, bio-related ingredients or materials. So it's a very interesting list. I have to confess, a lot of these things mean nothing to me, but I'm sure it will mean something to you. So check it out, because it gives you an opportunity indeed. You can have tariff exemptions of some of the imported equipment that you're going to use in your enterprise or your factory. You can have a preferential use of land, including the price that you're going to get the lease, and you can have a lowered corporate income tax. So this encouraged list has also two parts. One is the national one, which applies to all China, and one is the regional one. As you know, China is making a big attempt to equalize the areas which are kind of falling behind at the moment, which are the central, northwest, and northeast regions, which have a particular, slightly larger catalog. So there are many opportunities. You need to know where to look at, because the trend is foreign investors will be welcomed. It's going to be hopefully clearer for foreign enterprises to operate here, and opportunities will continue to exist. Now I will hand over to my colleague Valentino, who is going to make sure you don't fall into some trap.
Hi, everybody. I'm Valentino, and thank you so much for your attention. I know that you spent last 30 minutes listening to a very complicated issue and legal terms. So I guess right now we are all a bit tired, and thank you so much for staying here and paying attention to this. Before to pass to my part, let me add something on top of what Diana mentioned before, especially on the promotion industry, right? What happened in China is that often people don't have access, full access of information. So we invest in locations that maybe are not really promoting certain industry. For example, if I want to do, I don't know, shoe manufacturing, and I go to Guangzhou, Guangzhou has no interest. Guangzhou City has no interest in receiving those kind of investment, because maybe they pollute it and they occupy a large piece of land. So there are other cities, local level or provincial level, that may have preferential policy and give you some tax rebate or tax exemptions as well. So it's always important to plan your investment before you make it. And it's also important because if you plan in advance, you can really cut a good deal with certain local government. They are looking for investments. Personally, I'm working in China for more than 10 years, and I actually assist on those negotiations from the very first phase. In a very simple way, what happens is that you knock the door to the local bureau and say, okay, guys, I'm coming here, I'm bringing employment, I'm gonna bring, I don't know, millions of taxes, what do you give me back? And they're gonna help you out selecting the land, auction the land, and help you to level the ground, fixing the utility, building the street, all those kind of things. So it's important not to rush on the things you are doing just because you have to be in China because a friend of yours told you there the economy is booming, you're gonna make millions. Okay, Chinese market is not easy as it looks, but it's not even impossible. You need to be prepared, call your consultant, call Christina if you have doubts, and before making investment, think about it. Okay, I will speak about intellectual property. It is something we like. And if you see me looking up, it's because we have a strange arrangement with camera, so we have a double screen. Okay, I will say something that most of you already know, but we need to approach intellectual properties, they are like trademark, copyrights, and patents, from two levels. One is a domestic law level, and one is an international level. Because intellectual property are something protecting within the border of a country and can go beyond the border of a country in case this country agree upon. What does it mean? It means that if China does not agree to protect rights, for example, trademark, they are free to do it. Nobody can force them to do it. And of course, what happened is that China has all the interest in open the protection of intellectual property rights because in this way they can foster investment, right? And I can make you here an example you can see in the slide is that in case a foreign investor come into China and these rights are violated, you can also have an international level action. Means you don't have to go to the Chinese court only if your intellectual property are violated. You could go, for example, have an ISDS, is Investor State Dispute Resolution. You as investor, you could sue the Chinese government. And how to do that? This is something nobody thought about. How can an individual sue the Chinese government, right? China and other countries signed those called like BATs, are bilateral investment treaties, right? And you may have heard something about it because lately in December, European Union and China signed the principle of one of them. So China signed this agreement, for example, with Germany, with Italy, with Japan, and whatnot. If you are an investor of one of those countries, you invest in China, and your intellectual property are violated, and the BATs provide that you cannot violate my intellectual property, you may have right to sue and see your right actually, you take maybe compensation or see your right actually fulfilled, right? China at the moment has 145 BAT signed. I think there are even more. This is a report mentioned by Cornell University 2016. And there you go from the China-EU Comprehensive Agreement of Investment. It was a big fuss, December, together with Angela Merkel and also the French president. They signed this agreement in principle. Means that China, European Union agree on many, many things. Among those things, we have, for example, market access. China commit that if there is an investor from Europe going to China, for example, an Italian investor going to China, they will grant national treatment to them. In certain industry, they are not granted to other countries. For example, China is thinking to open the cloud service, right? That is something that everybody is talking about. In addition to this, this comprehensive agreement of investment mentioned as well the IPR protection, technology transfer issue, and something that European Union like, for me that I'm a lawyer, I like less, is state-to-state dispute resolution. It means that in case China do not fulfill the commitment of the comprehensive agreements of investment, just the European Union or the states could actually start a procedure for dispute resolution with China. So single investor in future could not sue the Chinese government for the same thing. So what kind of principles are stated in this comprehensive agreement of investment? First, there is the direct prohibition of forced technology transfer. We will see later what technology transfer is and why somebody say, okay, has been forced about it. There is also prohibition for the states to make a kind of interference in the licensing of technology. It means like, okay, you can license this technology only if you fulfill certain criteria or if you have a Chinese partner, something that Diana mentioned before. And of course, there are certain provisions about enhancement of protection or IPR, right? So we have this international level. So there is a protection, but of course, the big chunk of protection of IPR is in the domestic law. Each country has its own domestic law and different rules and regulation that protect a different kind of intellectual protection, intellectual property rights, sorry. For example, here I listed trademark law. That is the one that protects the brand, right? We have patent law for protection, copyright protection law, trade secrets, unfair competition. So China has a whole set of local laws that you are supposed to at least understand before to make an investment to make sure that you will be protected. Because, for example, for many people, they think, okay, I use my trademark in China, I have to be protected, even though I don't register it. This applies in the United States. This could apply in certain countries in Europe, but not in China, because in China there is a principle first to file. Means you gotta register your trademark if you want protection. If you don't register the trademark, sorry, nobody's gonna protect you, right? So you need to know those kind of things before make even the first step, because if you make the first step without having registered your intellectual property, it might be too late. We have experience in this, like people attending fairs, making business with partners for decades without registering nothing. In the end of the day, they have so many copycats and they have partners that cheat on them, and there is nothing you can do. Because a very simple analogy that I can make is like that. Why Chinese government should care of protecting your right if you don't even value those rights to pay a few thousand RMB to protect them? The simple fact that you don't want to spend a few, maybe 3,000 RMB on a trademark registration because you don't want to spend it. Why the government should put effort and money to protect your right if you the first one that doesn't care, right? So I didn't mention the foreign investment law in this regard as a source of local law, domestic law for IPR, because the foreign investment law is like a framework law. So they have a lot of goodwill and mention different part how the government should behave to protect the intellectual property of the foreign investors. One example is the Article 20 that mentions the prohibition of state expropriation. Why a state expropriation is connected with intellectual property? Because you could invest in China not only with money, you could invest with intellectual properties. Many companies, they don't have capital to invest, but they're brilliant in making patents, or they have a brand that is a hell of a brand and everybody buy things if you put the logo on any product, right? So what you do, you just find your partner or a Chinese partner, or by yourself, you establish a company, you make your brand evaluated abroad. You say, okay, you're worth millions, and you use this as investment. So in case the Chinese government, after you invest, come and say, you know what, I'm taking the company because I just want. In this case, you say, okay, but what happened to my investment? I invest intellectual properties. In this case, this could be considered as a state expropriation, and you could be compensated for the loss, right? Very few people understand there could be a chance to have intellectual property protection in case of state expropriation, but it could be. Another thing is actually connected with what Diana said before. It's about investment promotion, right? When you start conversating with the government and you start explaining, okay, I do this, I do R&D, I do that. One important things that you can put on the table is to guarantee a kind of like protection for your intellectual property, like trade secret, right? So try to make all the documents, all the information you share with the government as protected as you can, and have a commitment by them and say, okay, we won't violate this, we won't take this, we won't copy that. And this will be useful because in case they violate the promise, they breach the promise, you can actually sue them based on the agreement you have with them. Another thing is about, okay, fulfill the policy commitment, as I mentioned before. You can just skip it. So Article 22 is actually of the Foreign Investment Law is actually the core article about intellectual property that said that the government should protect the lawful right interest of owners of IP right. So it means that if there is a violation, you can complain. But one of the problems of the violation per se, as I mentioned before, is that many people do not even put any effort in protect their own intellectual property. So when comes that you go to the government, you knock the door, say, guys, my IP right has been violated, my trademark has been copied or not. The government will ask you, did you register in China? Did you extend your patent in China? Based on our experience, many people, they don't. So they claim for protection for something is not protectable. So if you want to use the foreign investment law protection and all other intellectual property laws protections, you need to abide by the law. So you must extend your patent. You must register your copyright, even though for copyright you don't need because they're actually internationally recognized. But you need to make steps to guarantee that your right could be protected. Because I can show you, I think it is on a slide later, it's about, okay, this technology transfer. Okay, trade secret. I will go back to technology transfer later. One point is about trade secret. Many people don't understand what trade secret is. They simply say, okay, I sign an NDA, that's it. It's not enough. You need to prove first of all, that's a secret. So it's not something any common person can understand. You cannot say, okay, I create this bottle, this is just a secret, and because I create this bottle, nobody can copy it to put the water in. Everybody knows a bottle, you can put the water in it. This is not a secret. Second, it's not enough to sign an NDA with somebody. If after you sign the NDA, you go to the KTV with your friends and you start sharing drawings of your trade secret, this can be used against you. So you need to put in place all kind of protection to prove, first of all, there is a secret. The second, you took step beyond simple signing an NDA to keep it secret. If not, nobody will protect you, right? And back to what I said before is about forced technology transfer by administrative means, is that somebody we will see later complain of the fact that local authority, in order to authorize an investment, will ask the investor to contribute his technology. Like, okay, you want to make, I don't know, 5G modem in China, we let you produce them, but you need to tell them how this modem work, for example. It's just an example, right? The foreign investment law say, no, you can't do that. And if any official do that, they might be liable. And the liability can be so severe that they could be criminally prosecuted. Nobody wants to be criminally prosecuted in China. And trade secret, we mentioned. Okay, so as I mentioned to you, foreign investment law is a framework, right? And there are certain rules, some rules are general, some rules are more specific, but the effect that the foreign investment law had on other laws and regulation is pretty outstanding. For example, as soon as the foreign investment law was issued, was 2019, so 1 year before the effectiveness, we assisted the reform of the trademark law, which protect the brands, okay? And the first point you can see Pinocchio, very nice there. They're saying there are punishment for bad faith registrations and liability for malicious trademark lawsuit. Means that if somebody is a trademark squatter, basically a person in China, the only things they do, they copy trademark of everybody else and they try to extort you money for exchange of it. You can sue them and you can actually force them to cancel the trademark And the authority will actually issue a fine to both the company that registered the trademark and the agent. So in this case, this is a breakthrough because agents like lawyers or, I don't know, trademark agents, they will be fined for something. So there is also a liability, a kind of due diligence liability, by which me, for example, as a trademark attorney, I need to make sure that the client coming to me registering a trademark is not a squatter. I need to make sure he has really a real intention to register this trademark. It belongs to him. Of course, there are limits of knowledge, but if somebody come to us and say, okay, guys, I need to register a new trademark called Nike, I may have some doubts that Nike does not belong to him. So this is a nice breakthrough. Of course, rejection to trademark not intended for use and subsequent opposition. What does it mean? When you go to the Trademark Bureau and try to register a trademark, actually to the NIPA, what happens is that you present a business license or business information. And of course, if you are a company that do, I don't know, air conditioning, and you want to register a brand that's, I don't know, recall something with coffee, they may have the doubt that you're doing this as a trademark squatter. So they may have some doubt that your registration is not legit, and they can oppose to it. They can say, okay, you're registering a trademark, is pretty weird. Why would you do that? Of course, you can open a dialogue. You could explain to them why you're registering such a weird trademark. But this is good because it could stop people for actually infringing the right before they really obtain the certificate. This is a very important action. And another important thing, the little pig, is about the penalty. Okay, the penalty now are way higher than before, and there are punitive damage up to 5 times of the actual loss, the one that you had, if somebody like register your trademark with bad faith, or 5 times the profit they made. And you say, okay, but in case they make, how can I prove they make this kind of money? Well, there is a kind of like statutory punishment that the judge can use and say, okay, because you trademark squatter, that guy did this, and I ascertain that you did this wrongdoing, I have a punitive damage that I can issue without knowing how much is the loss on the profit. They could be up, I remember correctly, to 5 million RMB. So that's a pretty big amount of money, right? And we have destruction of counterfeit goods, material, and tools for the trademark holder application. This is pretty cool because we did in the past some action, and we did the investigation, the raid with the ASC, and they go there like the movies, like to the factory, stop everybody, block the fake bags, and stop making minions of the situation. A little they take all the bags away, and they say they destroy it. We don't know if they give them as a gift to the wife, but they say they destroy it. Let's hope they did. And the last thing is more responsibility on agent. As I mentioned before, agent could be fined in case they help their clients in doing this. This goes also to the new patent law that has been issued last year, effective, I think it's June. And cool things about that is that they now provide an extension of protection. Okay, it's like 4 years extension. What does it mean? It means that when you apply for a patent, the evaluation of patent can take a long time, crazy long time. And the fact is that you are protecting from the moment you actually obtain the patent, not when you filed, right? But the protection of patent is limited. And the reason why it's limited is because the law protecting patent is made in a way that they want to foster innovation. If I patent, really, I patent the water, it's something stupid, means everybody needs to pay me like a royalty for creating water. And if this is the case, this will be forever, nobody can use water for free. So the scope of the patent law is actually the one to give you an exclusive right for a period of time, that is 10 years. And after 10 years, everybody can use your invention. So one of the problems is, of course, if it takes you 10 years to evaluate my patent, I will have just 10 years of exclusive right. because the first 10 years I spent it like evaluating and discussing, right? So Chinese government understood this. They say, okay, if we as law, for any reason whatsoever, let's give an extension, so your patent will be 25 and whatever time that they believe fit, right? And there is also the partial design protection in place. That is the case, for example, you patent a design, but you don't want to protect the whole design, just part of it. They say, okay, we can give you partial protection. And another cool thing actually about the new patent law is about the GUI, is actually the interface that you have on your phone, right? So you could register the interface. That is something very important. If you look at the iPhone, how clean is the interface, and everybody can copy the same thing, it would be a pity, right? So you could register that interface, but the problem in the past is that if somebody make a refrigerator, electronic refrigerator with a screen, and the interface of the refrigerator is like an iPhone, that GUI is not protected by the same patent because it's used for a different electronics. Now what they're doing is say, okay, doesn't matter the things that you apply the GUI, you'll be still protected. So if you copy the GUI on an iPhone, on a refrigerator, you still grant your protection. And similarly to the trademark law, they also increase the penalty and the statutory damage up to 5 million, which is something very cool, because in this case, they shift the burden of proof to the actually violator of your rights. Another cool thing, I think is very almost by the finish, is the forced technology transfer. So we assist this in a few years during the Trump administration. There was a lot of complaints. They say, okay, in order to access the Chinese market, we need to surrender our technology. And this was also done in a different way, not just by administrative way, but also by the fact that you need a Chinese partner. And when you have a Chinese partner, you surrender your technology and you lost it. This is something everybody was complaining. And in the past years, there are many reports, especially from the American Chamber of Commerce and the European Chamber of Commerce, complaining about that, and they lobby a lot. So when there was the trade war between China and the United States lobby on these things, and as you can recall, there was the phase 1 agreement with US in which they tried to stop this kind of practice. With the foreign investment law, we experienced 3 major changes right after the foreign investment law, because the foreign investment law just say in general, not technology transfer. If you do it, penalty, and the bad guy who do that will be sanctioned. The 3 main change up to the tier is actually technology import and export regulation. Okay, it happened in 2019. That means I think it was few weeks after the foreign investment law was issued. And in practice, the first change regards the indemnification provisions. Means that if, for example, I'm a technology owner and you are an OEM producer in China, and in order to, I don't know, or maybe you are licensed to sell my product in China, we sign an agreement in which we say, okay, me as a technology owner, I don't care if my right violate Chinese right, because I don't even know if somebody has a claim in China, right? I just give you this, I don't know, this phone, sell it. What happened is that in the past, no matter what you agree with your licensee, if you want to lower your liability as a technology owner, is invalid. This provision will be considered as invalid. It means that no matter what, if your licensee will be caught as a violating third-party right, you as a technology owner need to compensate them, regardless of the agreement between parties. For somebody, this could be considered as fair, but for other people, it's not, because they have a global business. They don't know what's happening in China. They don't know if the right are granted or not. More interesting is the Article 27 of the tier that was actually canceled as well. And this article was about ownership improvement. Okay, this is something very sensitive. It means that I come to China to produce. I mean, China was the factory of the world, right? And after I come here, find my Chinese partner, help me produce the OEM, We have a new model of iPhone, whatever, and through the production, he make an improvement. Somehow his antenna, the way he make it is stronger than my antenna. In this case, it doesn't matter that I was the technology owner of the base phone. The fact that he created improvement give him right to be owner of that improvement. Even though by agreement, we say that any improvement belongs to me because I'm paying you for that. And at the same time, the fact that he made the improvement give me right to use the improvement. And this is something for a lot of technology company was a problem. And this pushed them actually to sign deal outside China. For example, they choose Hong Kong. And they say, okay, let's do the technology license agreement in Hong Kong. And in China, we don't face this issue, right? So there was a kind of indirect way of solving the issue. Those are just a few examples of the forced technology transfer. There are still some issue, for example, for the previous, I think it was the contract law, and some interpretation by the Supreme Court about the technology transfer, but things are getting better. What we need to understand, that's something that I always mentioned with Diana, is that you need to really understand the trend. And the trend is going with more protection. Of course, foreign parties need to collaborate on this protection. If you just don't care about anything, you don't protect your IP right, you're not going to be protected because that's how it is. But we are moving toward a more open market and more chances for everybody. And I'm not sure if I finished. Okay. And I think this is it from our hand. And thank you so much for being with us.
Thank you, Valentino and Diana. I'm just going to stop your screen share and pass on to mine. All right. So far, there have been no questions that have popped in, but I've got a whole series of questions that I've written down throughout your presentation. So I will start away with those. But for those who are still on, please tell us, what was your biggest takeaway from today? I love to know this because it helps me and guides me into further webinar series and content and whatnot. So if you would just take a couple of moments and type into the chat box, what was your biggest takeaway? That would be absolutely fabulous. And then from my side, I'll start the Q&A. So I've actually got 6 questions that I've written down through your presentation. So I'm going to start off with the first one, which was, I mentioned in yesterday's webinar that I mentioned very briefly on the foreign investment law and how the total investment component when you're looking at registered capital doesn't have to be input anymore. But in practice, when you're actually establishing the company, when you're doing the online declaration, you're required to still put that number in. So I wanted to know from your experience, the presentation was very lawyerish. So let's move into practicality. In practice in Southern China, what is your experience with the actual implementation of the law?
Yeah, well, that's a pretty actually interesting question. Thank you so much. I think that right now, if the circumstances were normal, we should have earned more experience about that because almost like a year has passed and many investors came in, invest the money. The issue is that because of COVID, less people could come into China and less foreign investor actually came here and trying the new system, okay? Based on our experience, basically, there are changes, especially for Guangzhou level, related to the foreign investment law, right? And those changes are, for example, the online filing. They don't accept any more paper filing that was the case before. And for the online filing right now on the Guangzhou one, they don't ask the total investment.
Okay.
One of the issue though is that they may still ask the total investment after you file the online filing, because even though now it's online, the Guangzhou Bureau still asking a paper filing afterwards. Basically, seems like the online filing right now is just a pre-screening, is not the whole thing. And this is something from the experience I had in Shenzhen 2 years ago. There was a full online registration, okay? And even the signature of the investors were not required because the only things you could have done if you were in China, for example, is to obtain a USB key from a bank. And that was marvelous because basically the investor went to their own bank and said, okay, I need this USB key that is like a digital signature, and they could use that to sign virtually all the documents for the application. And it was crazy fast. I was shocked about that. So there are changes. And looking overall the situation, another change that I experience is that authorities now are more cautious in what they promise. As Diana mentioned before, now there is actually the commitment should be actually maintained, right? It should be respected. And for this reason, they don't commit like before and say, okay, I give you like free taxes for 20 years or whatever. They're more cautious before to make promises, let's say.
Well, can you give an example of what a promise would be?
Yeah, one of the promise, well, often the promise is related to the leveling of lending and the timing. Because, for example, when it comes of a big project, you need to build a factory, right? And you need to auction the land. And actually, the parcel of the land not always is perfect. Actually, most of the time is not, because it's a piece of land that is underdeveloped. So you auction the land, you obtain the right for a period of time that is actually fixed, depending if it's residential or if it's for factory or not. And later this land is just very raw, right? There is nothing. There are no utility, there is no street, and it's no level. I mean, it's not even. So in order to build a factory, you need them to level the land. You need to have the cable for the electricity, right? You need to have the pipe, the water pipes. You need to have a street, because if you don't have a street, the trucks cannot come. You can't build the factory, right? In the past, what we experienced is that they were like, oh, no problem, we will level the land in 2 days. And we say, what? It's gigantic, this thing. No problem, we will work day and night. And later it took years to have the land leveled, right? And if the land is not leveled, you can build. And another issue is that the promise you have a local government might actually have some kind of friction or problem with the national legislation, because you have a certain period of time after obtaining the right to build, to really build the factory. If you don't build, they will fine you, because they will say, this is our idle land, we will fine you. So before they were very easy, we do this, we do that. Now they're more cautious. So now they don't give you time. They say, we promise you, we will do it. We don't tell you when.
Understand. So there's just a question that came in from Clive. So before I go on to my further questions, so Clive was asking, if we have a equity joint venture agreement, do we now need to change this to meet the new foreign investment law? So Clive, just to let you know, in next month's webinar series, Valentino and Diana are coming back on for those companies that are already established in China to go through all the details about what companies already established have to do according to the foreign investment law. But Valentino, if you can just answer, or Diana, just answer briefly on that.
Plus, I think there is also another speaker of the session that will speak about joint venture, I think.
Yeah, tomorrow. Anyway, yeah.
So just to give you briefly, we need to understand the joint venture agreement content. Because usually what happens is the joint venture agreement content is actually a copy of the article association. And if the article association is in violation of the company law, you have 5 years time to change it. But if the joint venture agreement.
Hold on, five years from January 2020.
Yeah, you have 5 years from January 2020. Yes, right. And if you don't do that, you might have problem, because of course the difference between the joint venture and WFOE is that the superior organ of the company is the BOD, board of directors, not the shareholders meeting. So all the decisions are taken at BOD level. We actually have in cases right now that we are handling, of which JV, now they're trying to convert the situation. And the issue at the end is that if you don't take the step right now, it might take a long time to negotiate with your partner. So for now, you are fine. You have this 5 years time. Well, it's now 4 years time. Later, the provisions, they are not in contrast with the company law, could survive. For example, the way you share dividends or whatever, it's still okay if they're not against the company. But you need to start taking steps, because you don't want to be your 2025 with your partner
rushing.
Your term. Yeah, you will have your partner questioning the entire thing. And if you don't find a solution, in my opinion, it's very difficult maybe to find a judge that will settle a commercial dispute. So if you, at the end of the day, want to go to the court, I think the judge will ask you to liquidate the company, or maybe one of them need to sell the shares to the other if you don't find an agreement. Because I don't see a Chinese judge say, okay, but this guy's proposal is actually reasonable. It's too commercial. It's not a legal matter, and they can really force you. No, I don't want to say out, but they can really ask you, okay, guys, there is no solution. This is a deadlock. Just liquidate the company. So be careful about that.
I have probably a little bit of a controversial question, and maybe we don't have enough stats in relation to this, but do you believe, and again, you're in Guangzhou, so maybe provide your insight from Southern China. Do you believe that with the foreign investment law, it's a fair playing field now against Chinese domestic companies?
If you look on the side of the law, from legal text, it looks like. But if you look in practice, there are many obstacles the foreigners face and will face, regardless of the word of the law. And this can be not only for the foreign investment law per se, but could be for data protection. Are you foreigners comfortable of moving your personal information data to a server in China? Even though Chinese need to do it, but Chinese, they're already doing that, Chinese. So for them, change little, right? So also definition of level playing field must be assessed in this regard. I had a very good question. It was about the American, I think it was the American Council here in Guangzhou. They said, should we be happy of being equal, or maybe we should be treated better because we are bringing money in? There was something to think about it, because everybody was actually lobbying for equality, like we want the same right. Now maybe we want more than that, because same right is not really a cool thing if you consider that same right will be strictly enforced on us, whereas maybe same right, because they're not enforced against Chinese, that are enforced to foreigners, bring to unequal application, because the core is on enforcement most of the time. I don't know if I make myself clear, but
I will contradict the American consul and say we are guests in the country of China.
Yes.
And it is a privilege to be able to make an investment.
Yeah.
I'm not saying I'm right or wrong. I'm just going to contradict him and make this a little bit of a debate. Yeah, I mean, from a Shanghai, Zhejiang, Jiangsu province area, I mean, what I'm going to just add in my 2 cents is that I don't see it as a fair playing field as stated by the foreign investment law. I still think that every day it is a fight for a foreign investor to operate in China, and you just have to make sure that you're securing your business and you've got corporate governance in place to protect yourself. And Valentino mentioned, just one fact of being IPR. Have you protected that? Have you not? And that's just one area, right, that you have to look at. But I still don't see it as we're equal. And I think everyone will have their own opinion, but I'm just saying it from a practicality standpoint. Diana, you were mentioning on one of your first slides about some of the advantages that foreign investors get through the foreign investment law, which is government funding. And interestingly enough, I've had a couple of companies become aware of certain funding, like subsidies that are being offered by the government and whatnot. Could you perhaps maybe for Guangzhou or Shenzhen, just highlight maybe one type of government funding that is being offered to give an idea of what that looks like? And how would you apply for it? How would you go about getting it?
Well, in the Great Bay Area, and in particular in Shenzhen, if you have heard, there's a big push to kind of promote IT and high-tech companies. And there is a whole set of incentives which are leaving aside the kind of the soft incentives. There are monetary incentives, and they are explicitly stated not only at kind of province level, but they are city by city. Guangzhou offers this, Shenzhen offers this, and I have huge documents which list these incentives, which I didn't bring and I don't remember on top of my head, but there are specific incentives. And if you are in this niche, high tech, and even startups can apply for them. So there are specific things that you can do.
Okay.
Sure.
Do people get them?
Well, this is another question. But our life will always be more difficult as foreigners for very, very many reasons. And we have to be fair. The Chinese themselves fight like crazy for these things. It's not given for anyone. So, as Valentino said, you have to protect yourself. You have to push yourself because competition in China is huge. This is not about us foreigners feeling kind of comfortable here. We have to compete with these people who compete very, very hard.
Right. I had last year a couple of clients actually apply for grants and subsidies. And I'll give you the example of one who actually went to Ningbo, and he was applying for a grant on a district level and then applying for a grant on a city level. He did not win the grant on the city level, but got the grant on a district level, which forced him to establish his company in that district. So, don't expect that money will also flow in your bank account and you get to choose where you want to be. If you want that money, you're going to be encouraged to go into that district or that city and operate from there.
Lunch anywhere.
Exactly. And one of the things that I noticed in the application that they had to go through, which ultimately took 9 months to go through an application process and then 12 months to actually get money in the account, it's hefty. It's a lot of documentation. There's a lot of discussion. They want to speak to the owner of the company, not the intermediary who's doing the application. Very intense. And in the end, you have to weigh out how much money you're actually going to get in the end, and how that'll impact your business.
Yeah, you cannot substantiate your business based on this support. This is support. You need to have a valid and strong business model, and just consider this as an extra hand or something that might come.
A bonus.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. I had an interesting question in yesterday's presentation about government relations. So let's not talk about the big multinationals and the big companies. Let's assume that most people who are on here are SMEs who are looking to go into China. What is the interaction like with governments? Is there interaction? Do you need to have government relations? Who encourages those government relations? From a day-to-day business point of view, what is your opinion on that?
Okay, want me to answer? Okay. Well, you don't have to have interaction and depend everything to the scale of your company. Of course, if you're big, it's better to have it, but you don't have to. We have a lot of clients that never even talk with one government official, right? But truth is that many, let's say, regulations are really local, right? So if you don't interact with them, you're gonna have a hard time in applying them. And this is also reflected on the way you do business, right? For example, when it comes to data protection, it's a very simple example I can make here. Every district or city have a different checklist of checking how you protecting the data from leakage and whatnot. If you just rely on the law, you need, even though you're a small company, you need to have a kind of like a structure, or I don't know, like an organization that's like the Microsoft. You need to have an expert engineer of this, an expert engineer on that. You can afford it. But if you know what the local government will come and check, you can prepare ahead. And when they come, you can just give them what they're looking for, right? So it's not mandatory, but I think that all successful companies in China somehow have a good relationship with the government. That's also why I believe the complaint mechanism have to be the last resort for anybody, because being the guy that is complaining, it doesn't look good.
Mm.
My experience, especially in Italy or in the United States, is the country of the lawyers, right? And lawyers can actually have your rights preserved and getting compensation and whatnot. In China, if you start strong like this, because there are so many things that are like very general and they are subject to discretion, you can maybe have a successful result on one hand, but really fall short on all the rest. And they can come and say, okay, you are not paying this tax on time. You are not doing this. Are you paying the subsidy against the heat? In the south of China, we have a subsidy for factory in case the factory is too hot. Many people don't even know that. And if you don't have a good relationship with the government, they come and find you. But if you have a good relationship, they come, they talk, they allow you to maybe fix the things. You know, that's the thing.
Right. For those of you that are SMEs, it doesn't mean that I just want to highlight this. It doesn't mean that you have to go out and also formulate those relationships. You can also use lawyers and have a lawyer on, I want to say on retainer, but a lawyer on your speed dial who can also assist on those types of introductions or even in those types of meetings, because they generally have the experience in knowing how to have those discussions as well, right?
Yeah. Also, you know what? Also, Chamber of Commerce help a lot.
Yeah, I was going to say, I said that yesterday. A lot of the associations have those kind of connections as well, and do those meetings with, you know, they'll join in those meetings as well. Just some comments that popped in as we were talking. So Marta was saying that I'm going to downsize your question, Marta, but basically Marta has a program established in China where there is a foreign invested company as well as 2 nonprofit organizations. Do those companies have to also update themselves against the foreign investment law?
Well, if the non-profit organization actually having activities, they need to be registered as association, not like companies, right? So for all kinds of activities you have in China, you need to go through a certain kind of filing. Because if you have like, I don't know, an activity to, I don't know, giving gift to, or going to, I don't know, giving gift to the poor or whatever things, this kind of philanthropy scopes, it's important also to file the activity you're doing with the authority, because it's not always easy to say whether what you're doing is legit or not. For example,
No, sorry, Valentino, they're already established. The NGOs are established in China.
Yeah, they're already both established.
Yeah. The invested company and the
okay.
2 NGOs are already established. The question is whether they have to be updated with the new foreign investment law regulations.
No. The thing is that there are no substantial changes in the structure. You don't need to change your association to transform into something else. If you really got your paper in line, you're okay. I thought that she was okay. I have these things going, but I'm not registered.
No. According to her, it's registered. Yeah.
No, that is fine.
Yeah. I mean, my recommendation to anybody that has an entity in China is it really does not hurt to go to a law firm to do a check to make sure that your articles of association is updated according to the foreign investment law, and just to do a health check according to the foreign investment law that everything is in compliance. It's a one-time check that can be done now or within the next 4 years. Now that COVID has kind of eased everybody and we're in this new normal, my recommendation would be to just get that checked now, get it done, kind of like a cross-check list, just to make sure everything is okay. Because then you have time, as Valentino said, to make any changes if necessary. So just go through that. Okay, I've got 2 more questions. It's all coming from my side, apologies, but I'm interested. According to the foreign investment law, and then looking at the actual practical side of things where we're seeing that it's not really fully implemented, if a government official or if somebody that you're collaborating with is not abiding by the foreign investment law, what action can you take?
All right. So I think Diana mentioned before there is a new complaint mechanism. Okay. So this is something crazy new, guys. So I'm not even sure the documents we need to prepare because we don't have cases yet. So nobody filed a complaint yet. But there is a mechanism we could look into. Our practice in the past are two kind of action we took, especially before was with the Administration Industry of Commerce, was like the business registry, that they refused the investment for no reasons, right? The first one is going to the upper level. So there is any local authority as a kind of like self-complaint mechanism in which you can ask the superior to check the people under him, what they're doing. So basically, if the ASC district level is not doing what they're supposed to do, you go to the ASC, well, now it's changes administration of market regulation, you go to the city level. At the city level, we check whether the district level are doing the things right. One of the things in this regard that you need to consider is evidence gathering. Because one of the issues is that when you go there, they don't accept your documents. So you cannot complain if you don't have evidence of the misconduct, right? So it is important that the moment you go there and you try to have the things done, you record somehow what's happening. You ask them a rejection notice or you record what's happening. And later you go to explain. Because if you don't have evidence, the superior will just look at you and say, I mean, I don't even know if this is real, right? And this is the upper level action. They happen even before the Foreign Investment Law, but now they're more strict, right? The second one is administrative action. Like in any country in the world, there is an administrative lawsuit in which you sue the administration in front of an administrative judge. And you need a lawyer, you need to lawyer up, and you need to file a case with all the evidence, and a judge will decide upon it. They will say, yes, it's right, no, it's wrong, authority need to compensate and whatnot. So nothing new, very few people do it because you lose time, and you also need to understand what's the issue. Is, for example, the issue is that they're not accepting your company because your investment is too little, something like that. You would rather spend a year complaining or maybe try to see whether you could invest a bit more and make them happy, something like that, right? So a lot of company basically is not what we suggest, because as a lawyer, we're really happy to file lawsuits. What happens is that client just doesn't complain. They just say, okay, let's move on. Let's find another solution. Okay, this district is bad. Let's go elsewhere. A case study that I can bring you to you guys is very funny, actually. There was this guy investing in a remote area. I never heard about it. The moment he went to this area, they make the news. The TV was there, the newspaper. He's shaking the hand, I think, with the mayor, whatever. This guy is the best, artificial intelligence expert, whatever. What happened is that through the process, this guy spent the initial period to try to gather some funding before opening the company. And all the government were happy to help him or not. In the end of the day, they understood that this guy was not actually, was in needs of funds, not only shaking hands. So the government started pushing away and say, okay. The story ended that they also rejecting his visa and kick him out of the country because the understanding of the government and the understanding of the guy were totally different, right? And in this case, the guy came to me and said, Valentino, can we sue the government because they don't issue the visa? And one thing that I told him is okay, visa is where the government has sovereignty, 100%. They can reject you for no reason whatsoever. So before you even move into China, you need to secure that the fact that you have a visa, proper visa, and you have money to invest. And this is a bad ending, but that's what happens sometimes.
It does.
Yeah.
Unfortunately.
Yeah.
Okay, I'm going to go on to the last question regarding trademarks. So again, I'm going to be a little bit controversial because you were saying, oh, there are some companies out there, they don't take the time to register their marks, so how can they complain? You didn't say
Yeah.
it like that. You said it more nicely, but I'm going to come back to you on that. So,
Yeah.
you know, there are also some companies where China is not the market right now. And, you know, they're focusing on other international markets before they start thinking about the Chinese market. And I've had now 2 cases in the last 6 weeks where companies have said, I'm ready to go. I want to register my mark. And then oopsie daisies, somebody else has registered it.
Right.
So, I mean, in that type of situation, you know, the first option obviously is they go to an appeal, right?
Yeah.
But from a BIT perspective, because I hadn't heard that before in terms of going it on a world perspective, if these companies have registrations like throughout Europe, the US, the UK and whatnot, is there an option to, I want to use the terminology correctly. I think you said sue the government. Is that an option, or is the first option going for an appeal locally?
Yeah.
Or what would you do?
Yeah, sue the government through the BAT won't be an option because you need first look at the BATs. The BATs very seldom speak about market and assets. They usually speak about after you invest. So it means I'm already into China, I have my brand. And an easy example is like I'm Nike, I come to China. After I'm in China, Chinese government say, you know what, your brand Nike is China now, and I'm China Nike, something like that. For that, you could use a BAT, sue the Chinese government because I invest a lot of money in my brand and you steal it.
Okay.
So that's the perspective. The action you have in China, and actually we are quite successful about that, is that if somebody register, sometimes they register but they're not using it. So what we do an action called cancellation for 3 years of no use, in which we shift the burden to the counterpart to prove that in the last 3 years, he really using this trademark. If he does not have that, his trademark will be canceled. Okay.
What happens? Okay, hold on. I'm going to counter that. What happens if you're doing it sooner than 3 years? So the registration was done in September 2020, and now by chance this company wants to go in March 2021.
Yes. In that case, what you need to do, you need to file an opposition. You are within the 5 years for opposing. And in that case, we're very successful at many cases in which we proved that we were outside the Chinese market, but even though we were outside the Chinese market, we have a big reputation in China. Because what you got to prove is the reputation here. Of course, the first things of reputation is registration. So if I prove I'm registered here and I do advertisement here, I can prove I have reputation. But if I never register the brand, but all Chinese people knows my brand, I can prove that. Regardless of that, the authority will look at the counterpart who registered things and try to understand first if his registration is legit. So if the counterpart, as I say, for example, we do fashion, the counterpart does air conditioning, the authority will cancel his trademark because they say, okay, you're not legit. But if the guy is doing something similar, like clothes, etc., you might have a hard time. You might have a hard time. Of course, you gotta prove that the guy knows. Maybe another case that often we see is that the guy was your supplier. In the case, if you can prove he's a supplier, you can cancel for bad faith registration. Okay. If you don't have that, reputation. So even though I'm not in the Chinese market, all Chinese people knows me because there is the president of China drinking my water, for example. If I'm not important, why is he drinking my water? This is something you could use. Of course, each case shall be evaluated based on the circumstances.
Right.
And but it's very surprising that a lot of the time are the partner doing this, the former partner of your clients. And I remember one time a partner registered a label of a bottle of wine of our client. And this label was so artistic that they had really the face to go in front of the trademark bureau and say, we draw it. And this label was so weird that how can be the two people at the same time draw the same thing? You know? Yeah, that was one of the funny cases we had.
Great. So I'm going to leave it there because we have gone over time by quite a bit. And
Really?
for all of you that have stayed on, thank you so much. Just to finish off today's presentation, first of all, Valentino, Diana, thank you so much for joining me today. If you guys, and by the way, just to mention, Valentino and Diana are based in Guangzhou, but they also have an office up in Shanghai. So if you guys do need to have any form of legal contact, I highly recommend their law firm. Definitely reach out to them. In terms of ways to work with me, again, you know, I'm the administrative arm to law firms in many instances. So we do the actual implementation of a lot of things. We can act as supervisors, finance managers when incorporating entities and whatnot. And then obviously doing the outsourcing solutions for accounting, tax, and compliance work. If you guys are interested in reaching out either to myself or Valentino and Diana, as mentioned, all of our details are in the chat box. Once I close this Zoom, the contact information will not be available anymore. So I suggest you copy and paste it somewhere so that you have it on hand. All of their details are listed at the top of the chat section. And last but not least, we've got 3 more webinars in this series. Tomorrow, we're going to be talking about the JV infection. And I don't know if Roger's still on, but Roger did join us for today's session and he is still on. So Roger's going to join us for tomorrow's session and he's going to be presenting with his colleague on that. I'm really excited about it. I love the title. On Thursday, we're going to be talking about how to get the most out of our China market entry. And on Friday, we're going to be talking about registered office addresses. Valentino and Diana talked a lot about location. What's the best location? Finding that location that fits what you're looking to do. And that's why I've dedicated one whole session just on that, because for me, it probably is one of the biggest mistakes that companies make when going into China is all about the registered office address location. And so I want to place a little bit more focus on that. So Leanne was saying, can you please bring the screen with contact details back up? Leanne, I'm just going to copy and paste the details again. So it's at the bottom of the chat and then you can just copy and paste it yourself. Here we go. I've just done that. There you go. I hope you can copy and paste that from the chat box, Leanne. There we go. If you guys have any other questions, let me know. Otherwise, for sign up of the other 3 sessions, you can do that at our website, woodburnglobal.com/events. And for that, I'm going to leave you. Thank you so much for joining us. Valentino, Diana, thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Have a
Take
good
care,
day.
everyone. Have a great
Bye.
afternoon. Bye.
Bye, guys.